The Lewis and Clark Expedition. Captain Meriwether Lewis and Lieutenant William Clark headed the Lewis and Clark Expedition, which explored the Louisiana Purchase in the Pacific Northwest. The voyage was a defining moment in American exploration history. The expedition lasted from 1804 to 1806. In this image, on the left, we see Captain Meriwether Lewis, and on the right, Lieutenant William Clark. A quick timeline. On May 14, 1804, their journey began. Lewis and Clark left Camp Wood and launched their 55-foot Kell boat into Missouri River. On August 20th, 1804, 3 months after setting sail, the first member of the party dies, Sergeant Charles Floyd. His appendix burst and he wasn't able to be saved. He is the only member of the group that did not make it through the expedition. On September 25th, 1804, a band of Lakota Sioux demanded one of the boats before allowing them to continue. The expedition faced their first big setback. In order to defuse the issue, medals, military coats, hats, and tobacco were given as gifts. On December 24th, 1804, Fort Mandan is constructed. The members have taken refuge for the wintertime here. On June 3rd, 1805, they arrived to the Marias River's mouth and came to an unexpected fork. Because they didn't know which way the Missouri River flowed, they set up camp and sent scouting parties down each branch. On June 13, 1805, the sighting of the Great Falls of Missouri, led by Lewis and his scouting team, confirmed the expedition's correct route. On August 13, 1805, Lewis successfully crossed the Continental Divide. That is where he met Camelweight, the Shoshone Indian chief. He travels with him via Lamai Pass to construct Camp Fortunate, where he would undertake negotiations. On August 17, 1805, after Socagaway discloses that Camelweight is her brother, Lewis and Clark successfully arranged the purchase of 29 horses in exchange for uniforms, rifles, powder, balls, and a handgun. A Shoshone guide named Old Toby will lead them through the Rocky Mountains on these horses. On September 13th, 1805, the group's already low resources were depleted by the voyage across the Continental Divide at Lamai Pass and the Bitterroot Mountains. They were forced to consume horses and candles in order to survive. November 15th, 1805. The group finally reached the Pacific Ocean at the Columbia River's mouth. They decided to camp on the Columbia River's south side. On November 24th, 1805, it's finally time to burrow down in the winter quarters. After finally reaching the Pacific coast, Lewis and Clark built Fort Gladstone, their temporary home for the next 5 months. 5 months later, March 22nd, 1806, the company departed Fort Gladstone to embark on their journey home. On May 3rd, 1806, they rejoined with Nez Perce tribe, but are unable to continue with the Lolo Trail across the Bitterroot Mountains due to the mountain's snow cover. To wait out the winter, they build Camp Chaponish. On June 10, 1806, 5 Nez Perce guides leads the expedition on 17 horses to travelers' rest through Lolo Creek, a path that was 300 miles shorter than their westward route. July 3, 1806. The expedition is divided into 2 groups, having Lewis leading his up the Blackfoot River and Clark taking his up the Bitterroot River through 3 forks, Jefferson River, Gallatin River, and Madison River. July 25, 1806. Pompey's Tower, named after the Socagaway's son, is a sandstone outcropping in modern-day Billings, Montana, where Clark engraves his name and the date. It is the only surviving physical proof of Lewis and Clark's voyage. July 26, 1806. In Montana, Lewis's company is greeted by a small band of Blackfeet warriors. Lewis discovers the Blackfeet attempting to take their firearms and horses after camping together overnight, and kills a young brave. The young brave's death was the lone native death on the entire exploration. On September 23, 1806, the team returned to St. Louis, having traveled in total for 2 years, 4 months, and 10 days, completing their expedition. Areas explored and the route of the expedition. Preparation for the journey began in Washington, D.C. and Pennsylvania. On August 31st, 1803, Lewis departed Pittsburgh and began his 981-mile voyage down the Ohio River. Lewis and Clark met in Louisville, Kentucky, and continued their trek down the Ohio River. Once in St. Louis, Missouri, the track continued westward till reaching their next destination, Camp Wood, present-day Wood River, Illinois. A short journey later, they reached St. Charles, Illinois, which they left in 1804. They continued their route up the Missouri River on their way to their next destination, where they would meet the Blackfeet, who were located in the northwest part of Montana. When about halfway there, they were met with the death of Sergeant Floyd. After coming into contact with the Blackfeet, they headed to their next destination, Fort Cloudstop, located in the Oregon County near the mouth of the Columbia River. This was during the winter of 1805 to 1806. It was around here where they started to head back, continuing through Washington, eventually meeting the Nez Perce, indigenous people of the plateau, who are presumed to have lived on the Columbus River Plateau. After their encounter with the people, they continued on to Three Forks, the headwaters of the Missouri River. The team ended up covering a total of 8,000 miles, roughly 20 miles per day. The purpose of this expedition was to survey and explore the newly bought area and to establish practical routes through the western half of the continent through the Pacific Ocean. Here is an image depicting the expedition's group on boats. Here's a quick map showing the route of expedition that Lewis and Clark covered from 1804 to 1806. On their expedition, plants, animal life, and geography were identified. 178 plant species in total were discovered. Some examples were the aspen tree, bear grass, biscuit roots, bitterroot, and elkhorn. Around 122 animal species were identified. Some examples would be the grizzly bear, the elk, salmon, coyote, mountain beaver, bobcat, moose, and rattlesnakes, along with geography that was identified. For example, Northern Lights, graffiti on the trail, Clark's view of Sioux Land, and Clark's Fort Mandan maps. The team as well discovered and encountered various tropical illnesses, including dysentery, tick bites, boils, venereal disease, and only one of the team members suffered from them. Here's another image of what the expedition could have looked like. The interaction with the Native Americans. One of the expedition's main goals was to observe the whereabouts, lives, military strength, activities, and cultures of the multiple Native American tribes that inhabited the newly bought land by the United States as part of the Louisiana Purchase. The point of the expedition was to make the Native Americans aware of the fact that the land now belonged to the United States. Along the way, the team encountered many native nations and tribes, many of whom offered to help and knowledge to the environment and wilderness. When negotiating with the native tribes, the expedition was provided with various gifts of metals, needles, mirrors, ribbons, and other articles which were used as objects to ease tension and problems when negotiating with Indian chiefs. Most tribes, when encountered by the British and French, had friendly experiences. However, on September 25, 1804, with the Teton Sioux tribe under chiefs that consisted of Black Buffalo and the Partisan, the encounter was not as friendly as they would have hoped. The voyage was confronted by these leaders, who wanted tribute in exchange for the expedition's passage across the river. The Lakota people, made up of 7 native tribes, ruled a large inland empire and demanded gifts or payments from strangers who wanted to sail their rivers or pass through their lands. According to Harry W. Fritz, all earlier Missouri River travelers had warned of this powerful and aggressive tribe, determined to block free trade on the river. The Omaha Indians who lived to the south were also planning a punitive invasion. 75 Omaha men were killed in a recent Sioux raid, which also resulted in the burning of 40 lodges and the capture of 4 dozen people. Captain Lewis made his first blunder by first offering gifts to the Sioux chief, which offered and infuriated the Persian chief. Because the expedition's lone Sioux language interpreter, Piri Dorin, had stayed behind with the other party and was also involved in diplomatic dealings with other tribe, communication was difficult. As a result, both chiefs were given a few gifts, but neither of them were content were content, and each wanted gifts for the warriors and tribe. At that point, some of the partisan tribe's warriors grabbed their boat and one of their oars. Captain Clark raised his sword and threatened deadly retaliation, while Lewis took a hard stance, ordering a show of force and presenting arms. Just before the event developed into a physical altercation, Black Buffalo ordered his warriors to back off. The captains found a way to argue or negotiate the situation without causing further damages or altercations. They did this with gifts such as whiskey and treasures. The crew set up camp near Black Buffalo's tribe for the following 2 days. When they attempted to flee, they were met by similar instances, but the situation was resolved with tobacco gifts. My reference is in AP8 format. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my presentation.